welcome back to the next talk titled Beyond the Buzzword, Building a Truly Data-Driven Organization. Our next speaker is the Director of Analytics at Wise, where she has built and led a global team of 40 analysts over the past 3 years. With a decade of experience in the tech industry, she is a passionate leader dedicated to coaching and mentoring others toward fulfilling careers. Her expertise spans both individual contribution and leadership development across all levels. Let's welcome to the stage Hazal Muhtar.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me okay? Because I was in the crowd before and it was a bit quiet. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Hazal. I lead the Global Product Analytics team at Wise. I will be talking to you guys about how to build a data-driven organization in the next half an hour or so. But I will preface this by saying I actually really hate the word data-driven, AI, like any of these buzzwords that I know we obviously hear a lot today. I feel like every time these words get thrown out, we think that it makes our organization sound smarter and cooler and we're doing innovative things, and that really irks me as an analytics leader. So I will be talking a little bit about what it really means to actually have data in the front and center of your decision making. I also want to say it's a huge commitment to dedicate your Saturday to data, especially on a day like this. So thank you for being here, and thank me for being here instead of enjoying the sunshine, which is really rare. Okay, so let's get started. A little bit of background beyond my introduction. I'm a bit older than some of the people in the audience. So when I was studying, data science was not available as a track. So I studied math, economics, and psychology, completely not knowing what I would do with that combination. I thought I would do something like behavioral economics, and then fell into the world of data when I graduated pretty quickly. I started my career in market research and then moved to LinkedIn as an individual contributor, did a program manager role, moved to people management, and then about 4 years ago, I was hired into Wise, back then it was TransferWise, to build out the analytics team. When I joined, we had around 50 analysts, but we didn't really have an analytics department. They were under an analytics guild that reported into product management. So they didn't really have a career map. There weren't really clear guidelines on what it means to be an analyst and how to engage with the rest of the business. Since then, we've scaled the team to over 200 people, and the area that I look after is now over 40, and when I started, it was 7. So I think that experience is the reason why I'm here. That doesn't mean that I have all the answers, but I had to do a lot of soul searching and thinking to really fuel what is my approach to scaling and building out my team. And I'll be sharing a little bit of that throughout the day, or throughout the next 20 minutes or so. So when I was hired, again, the idea was we are a data-driven company. Wise is a very innovative company that believes in data-driven decision-making, and they had a bunch of data people. Some of the data infrastructure was there, but again, the idea was to actually build an analytics organization. So when I was given this task, I had to really take a step back and think through what is my operating model, what is the philosophy around which I want to build my team, and I landed on these 4 pillars, or these exercises that I've done for myself. The first one was vision. I was given a decent amount of budget, which was actually not really capped, to hire into the team. And when you are put in a position like that, it's really easy to say, well, we'll just hire a bunch of people and then figure out what we do with them. And I think sometimes a lot of organizations, if they have the means to do it, do that, which I do not support at all. So the first thing that I wanted to do for myself was to justify these group of people that I will be leading or I lead. What do I want them to stand for? Why did I exist? What is the reason why I've hired these people? What are they here to achieve? What is the problem that they're trying to solve? And I wanted to be really clear about that before I did any sort of hiring. The second one was organizational structure. So once I've aligned on a vision and a mission statement for my team, I had to really think, how do I want these group of people to engage with the rest of the organization? organization so that we are actually producing the right impact and the outcome that we want to see. We have an embedded model, which I really stand behind, and I will be talking about that throughout the presentation. But essentially, the idea was to get the data people across the organization as close to the decision making as possible and really empower them to own the space that they're in so that they're not really interacting in a very transactional way, but they actually have their own opinions on what analysis they should do and what the product teams should be building, etc. The third one is, okay, we've got a cool vision and a mission. We have an engagement model that seems to make sense on paper. So for this to really work, who do I need? What types of people do I need? What skill sets do I need? And then the last bit was, and I don't think that many companies spend a lot of time on this, it's not so much about the culture, but the values. How do I want these people to show up? Who am I looking for beyond the technical skills and maybe the soft skills? I want them to have a skin in the game. I want them to want to make the product better. If you hire a bunch of analysts who are technical wizards who really know how to build sophisticated models and do cool things, but they actually don't care what happens at the end of all of that analysis and the end result of the product and the impact that it has on the customers, it really falls flat. You get a bunch of people doing cool things that go nowhere, and that was something that I really, really cared about. So ultimately, that brought me to the most important bit that I needed to start with, which is, again, around the articulation of that vision for the team. And there are two things that I always come back to, and I encourage anybody, whether you are in a data role yourself or you are in a leadership position, to really try to answer these questions for any subset of people that you have in your organization. The first one is, what is the biggest problem that you're trying to solve? And then what are the decisions that you should be able to make that you cannot currently make? And let that be a guiding principle for the way that you organize your teams. And again, that's not just applicable to data, it really applies to any part of your organization. But if you're not doing a bit of soul searching in terms of where do I want to take this business, where do I want to take this product, where do I want to take this offering, and what do I need to see to have conviction to take it in whatever direction, that's really the starting point behind any sort of capability that you would build. So pretty much a couple years into my career, I, for the first time, answered what data-driven means for me. It doesn't mean having a bunch of data people. It doesn't mean having a bunch of data. It actually means being really clear around the problems that you're trying to solve in your company and then having an organizational structure with the right skill sets that will help you get there. So this is something that I will be coming back to, but at the really heart of everything that I've been talking about is this very simple dynamic of problem and solution, right? Every company, in very simplistic terms, exists because they identified a problem, they were clear on the problem space, and then they figured out a solution, and those solutions expanded from there, and now they offer a bunch of things if they are a growing company. You always have to come back to this dynamic. What is the problem that you're trying to solve, and what is the solution? And when something fails, come back where this dynamic is falling apart. And your analysts and the data people that you have in your organization, regardless of how technical they are or how good they are on product thinking, should be able to help you assess this dynamic. So again, what does that mean? This is something, if there's anybody in the audience who is a product manager, would be very familiar with a line of questioning like this. But this very much applies to what I believe makes a data person or somebody in analytics incredibly strong. So being really clear on the problem that you're trying to solve, whether that's internal, external, whatever project that you're touching. Why are you working on this? Clearly articulate to me, why is it worth you spending time on this? Not because this is a fun project, it's a complex project, it's a cool thing to do. All of these things are valid reasons, but for it to have business impact, tell me, why are you working on this? And to really to dig into that, you need to understand this problem that you're trying to tackle. Why is it happening? Who is it affecting? What is the ideal solution for this problem? And what information do you have? It could be qualitative or quantitative to be able to solve this problem, and then build the right solution, and then come back to the solution that you've built and make sure that it works. And again, I'm talking about it through a very product innovation lens because Wise is a product-led tech company, but it actually, like, this principle really applies to any form of business problem solving, regardless of how your organization is set up. And to me, information, data, analytics is a core part of how you get really clear in this line of questioning. I will give you an example of when this really falls apart so that you can actually kind of contextualize some of the things that I'm talking about. So Wise, if you guys are familiar, started as an international remittance company. You can send money overseas, but for the last multiple years, we've expanded our offerings to not just focus on remittances, but also focus on building an international bank account. As a part of that, we have a card that you can use to spend when you are traveling overseas. It's something that we want our customers to adapt. This example is quite old, but I wanted to show you where sometimes things can fall apart. We saw that our card adoption and consequently the behavior, the volume of spending overseas was very, very low. So we looked at this problem as a company and said, well, people are not using the card. They're not generating the behavior, or they're not displaying the behavior that we want them to display. So we will look at our customers that are high frequency send customers, so anybody who's doing really high remittances, and we will just send them a bunch of free cards because we believe that if we just send people a bunch of free cards, all of a sudden they will have a use case to use the card and then they will adopt the cards. Obviously, that did not happen. I mean, for some people, it could happen, like just because you got a free card, which normally you have to pay for, you might start using this product. But we actually completely missed the point of, look, why this adoption was not happening, what is the problem that we're really trying to solve, and why do we believe that this solution that we came up with, which is just sending a bunch of cards to customers that are using us for something else, will solve the problem. And when you look at an example like this, which we iterated on, you realize really quickly, as humans, we are not very good at deductive reasoning. You can look at a problem and then be really biased in the solution that you create. And so you need a bunch of people in that middle layer, like to connect the problem to the right solution, to help you think through how do you get to the ideal outcome by being really clear on, again, what is the problem that you're trying to solve? Why is this problem happening in the first place? Who do I want to solve this problem for? And what do they need to see in my product to actually display the behavior that I want them to display? So this is a really tangible example of something that is seemingly simple that could go really, really wrong when you don't have the right people in the organization or the right setup in the organization that could help you do this seemingly simple deductive reasoning. So again, when one of the practices that now we can really easily have at Wise through the analytic structure that we have is this line of questioning, right? So when we launch something that doesn't actually yield the results that we really care about, we can come back to the problem and the solution really easily, and we've got the right people in place that can really help us answer these. So if something that you're launching or something that you're working on in your business is falling flat, either you identified the wrong problem, or you misjudged its complexity or prevalence, or you found the right problem. It was the right problem to work on, and it was really important and prevalent, but you came up with the wrong solution. You misunderstood what was causing the problem. You solved it poorly. Maybe the solution that you've created is actually not hitting the mark, or you underestimated its complexity. You thought that something simple, like sending a bunch of free cards, would solve it when it actually takes a lot more nuance than that. So all of this sounds great, but this talk is about how do you build an analytics organization. So I'll take a step back and talk a little bit about if this is the outcome that we want in our organization, and this is the decision-making muscle that we want to create. Where do you need to start for this to be achievable? The first one is, and again, I'll preface this by saying, I'll go back so you're not reading and being distracted. But the thing that I want to stress and acknowledge is I had a very, I think, easy setup coming into WISE, given that we didn't really have an analytics organization and we were starting not necessarily from scratch. We did have a bunch of analysts, about 50 of them, but we didn't really have these like rules and engagement models in place. So when you have an opportunity like the one I had, it's really easy to try to implement best practices from the start. So I want to caveat all the things that I'm talking about by saying I know it's not really easy to do these things when you have a more mature organization or you have practices that are already in place that requires you to do a lot of change management. So that's really worth acknowledging. But if we all agree that this is the model that we want to aspire to, then we can start making some of the changes in our organizations. But the first one is, and again, if you have this already, I congratulate you, especially if you are in a startup or scale up. We actually didn't have this at WISE when we were like a couple thousand people and a bunch of analysts. In order for decision making to happen and data to be useful, you need data. You need data to be available. You need it to be reliable. You need your metrics to make sense. You need them to be consistent. And you need a data governance process. You need standardized data tables. You need consistent metrics. You need them to be defined in snippets, like code snippets that people can use. This all takes a lot of time and effort to get to, and this is something that we've implemented a lot of like time and resources behind. But this is a really foundational place. In order for any organization to use data in a very strategic way, you need access to data to not be a blocker. And I think when we are in a world where we are moving fast and trying to be a bit scrappy with the information that we're trying to get, we sometimes overlook this layer or don't do as good of a job. And then I can tell you from experience, it takes a lot of time to undo the poor practices that you've implemented in your organization. So if you have an opportunity to really establish best practices before things go haywire, I would encourage you to really think about this layer before you think about anything else. The second one is data literacy. What you want in order for an organization to be data-driven, you really don't want data to sit in amongst a group of people who are the data people, right? Like you want the organization to really be clear on when there's a reporting, what does that reporting really mean? What is that metric? What is it measuring? How do I access this? If there's a dashboard that's displaying this information, do I know how to interact with that dashboard so I can get that information for myself? If data is isolated to analysts, first of all, you're creating a huge amount of dependency and you need to hire a ton more people to answer all the questions that are coming from the business, which is not something you want to do. And also, these people are way more qualified than just answering those questions, so you're wasting money by basically assigning them a Q&A job that you can actually completely get rid of by enabling your organization to speak data without knowing how to code, etc. And I think having practices that enables that data literacy is incredibly important. And then so you've got reliable, accessible, consistent data. You have an organization that can understand and read data, not necessarily produce it. The third bit is, how do you set up an engagement model that maximizes that impact? So this is the bit that I was referring to around the embedded model. So if you have a centralized analytics team, it takes a lot of effort and change management, again, to move to an embedded model. And it also likely means that you have to scale your organization to be much bigger in most cases. So this is not an overnight transformation, but you can take these principles and really think about how it could apply to a centralized model as well. But the idea is whatever organizational structure that you have in your organization, whether that's a product team, whether that's a business layer that you want to have analytics support behind, be able to have dedicated people that are responsible for that area is really, really important, because one of the things that I've learned the most in my career is having your work be contextual makes or breaks your impact, right? So if you are working on something, or somebody has asked you to work on a piece of analysis, or like they've asked for a piece of data, and you actually don't know what is the problem that it's there to solve, or why the person who is asking for it is asking for that information, your input is going to be transactional. You will not be able to be creative about the solution that you create. You're not even necessarily going to know how deep you need to go in your analysis. And again, that doesn't mean that you need to have one-to-one mapping in all your organizational layers, but to the extent that you can have people who are responsible for themes of problems in your organization, the better it is. And you train those people to really know the space that they're in beyond knowing the data, right? Tell me exactly why this problem exists in this area and why you exist to solve the problems there. And you build an organization where you set that expectation with all the people who are bringing analytics as a skill set, whether they are in machine learning, data science, business analytics, product analytics, etc. And what I mean by that is, if you hire an organization or you set the expectation in your teams that they need to have a seat at the table, and they need to take that seat at the table, and they need to be empowered to have opinions. And it's not just like buzzwords that I'm saying. Like, you can actually incorporate this in your career maps, etc., to make it a requirement that you have an opinionated analytics organization. I think that really maximizes the impact that you can get from that team. For us, what that means is, again, we are a product organization, so that means across the entire product innovation cycle, our analysts play a role. They have opinions on what we should build, where we should look for, how we should define the problem, what solution we should create, how we should execute on it, when we execute on it, how we should launch it, and then how we should measure the impact of what we have launched. If you are an analyst that's involved with that entire life cycle, naturally over time you will be very opinionated on the next thing that your team should be doing, or a piece of analysis that you need to do. To get there, again, this may not apply to all organizations, but we believe you need to be full stack analysts. So what that means is, from data pipelining and engineering to analysis to modeling to softer skills like influencing stakeholders, having a product mindset, being able to communicate effectively, have analytical thinking. All of these skills, again, you don't need to be a jack of all trades, but you need to have elements of each of these things so that you can move fast and behave independently in the area that you're responsible. And we also clearly lay this out in our career map, right? So there are technical skills that we very much care about, but more importantly than that, we have the meta skills, so problem solving, communication, domain expertise, influencing, etc., that we assess our team on, and that sets the right expectations. And what that ultimately does is, again, I've talked about our analysts being involved in the entire product lifecycle. That means that there are a bunch of different hats that they have to wear throughout that process. They need to own and know the data within their spaces as clearly as possible. I put funnel analysis there because I cannot underestimate the importance of such a simple thing. You've built a solution to a problem. It takes 8 steps. Does the solution work? And if it doesn't work, where does it fall apart? Everybody should be asking this very, very simple question, and you would be shocked to hear how many people just don't. And they look at, okay, I have 10 people using this, but where did they fall off? Or did they even come to this funnel in the first place? Again, seems so simple, but I've worked in organizations where I think people are incredibly brilliant, and when you are moving really, really fast, I think you just sometimes forget the basic principles. So it's good to have somebody just reminding them, hey, actually, like, you've built a really terrible third to fourth step, and everybody is just like not being able to get through that step. So like, let's really fix it. Obviously, having a really clear KPI structure, so meaning making sure that the area that you're responsible for not only has a clear problem statement, but has clear metrics around that problem statement, makes it really easy for analysts and also product managers or anybody in your business to be able to look at the value that you're getting from that space and whether the things that you're working on are having the desired impact. We do something called impact sizing. So sometimes this is obviously, most of the time, it's speculative. But we go back to the hypotheses that we have around the things that we're launching and try to estimate, okay, why is this problem worth solving? By looking at how many customers it is impacting, what is the value that we can expect from it, and ultimately, what is the expected movement in our main metrics that we would see if we were to put resources behind that problem. And our analytics team plays a big role here. Again, I mentioned this a little bit, but having all of this set up maybe sounds nice to all of you, to some of you, but if you already have an organization that works in a very different way, getting here takes a lot of time and effort. And all I can say is just being patient and keeping the end goal in mind as you're working through these challenges, because you will have a lot of people who are resistant to these types of ways of working, or your organization isn't set up to make this as intuitive as possible, and this does require a huge amount of change management. Cool. So I'm actually really, okay, I'm good. Cool. So what that ultimately means is I wanted to talk about why this is actually important. So at the very beginning, I said if you have a bunch of data people in your organization and they don't really have a skin in the game and they don't really care about the customer impact that they're going to have, your customers themselves are going to suffer from that. So making sure that your analysts work in a way, and again, when I say analysts, every organization calls it something different, and also the technical skills that are required for the different types of challenges that you have may look different. So I'm using that as a general term. Any data analytics person that you have in your organization, they need to be able to work really backwards from what is the company trying to do, what are the levers that we need to pull to get the company there, and then what are the different layers of metrics that we have to hold ourselves accountable. So you might have a team that's working on a very small aspect of your customer's experience. Obviously, there will be very immediate things that you can see, leading indicators or primary metrics that you can look at. Okay, customer contacts drop or conversion from this to this increase. That's easy to see. But then you need to be able to ladder those things up and say, because contacts decreased, we saved this much on X, or because we are seeing that our customers have to contact customer support this much less, we are seeing that their activity on a monthly basis has increased by this much, and as a result of that, we're seeing this much more volume in our ecosystem. So being able to do this level of articulation is incredibly important. And if you have that structure in place, it actually makes your analysts or the data people that you have in your organization always think about the outcomes for the company and outcomes for the customers. So I'll give you a couple of examples to, again, contextualize some of these things that I was talking about. And I on purpose chose impactful things that we have launched over the last couple of years that had insanely simple analyses behind them. Because one of the things that also frustrates me is we've got incredible companies and tools that are out there that are creating all these like innovation in our tech spaces. You can do a lot of cool things that increase your efficiency. Amazing, brilliant tools, but we don't have many amazing, brilliant companies all the time, right? Like, just because you're adopting these tools, that doesn't actually make your company amazing. I attended a talk a couple of months ago where the headliner said, we don't have a technology problem, we have a decision-making problem. And we are living in like a thinking pandemic, and I couldn't agree more, right? You need people who can actually think simply and leanly about problems, and if and when a more advanced intervention is required, they can selectively choose to implement it. But sometimes what we end up doing is to have a bunch of things, like tools in our belt, but then not know how to use those tools, and then they don't really get us anywhere where we need to get to. So I'm not saying that it's the wrong thing to invest in advanced technologies, but you need to start from a place where you're actually really clear on the thing that you're trying to solve. So again, I chose this because this talk is about how to build a data-driven organization and not doing cool technical things. So these examples are very, very simple. So one of the most impactful things that we've launched as a part of this transition from being just a remittance company into a company that provides a more holistic banking experience was Launchpad, which is essentially a navigation system that sits on top of our app on our website. When you come to Wise, you can now see, or for a while now, you could see all the different types of things that you could do, and it's tailored to who you are, your existing behavior on the platform, so we can be really targeted around next best action, right? Which is not a really innovative idea. But we didn't have this for a very long time. So we launched all these tools, and we launched all these products and features within our Wise account, and they had very low adoption. And when we did a very simple analysis of where are people falling off, we saw that most of them weren't even finding these products because they were in like, not necessarily to us, obscure places of the product, but to the customer they were. So we spent all this engineering time and effort building things that we thought were valuable to customers, and then we seemingly made it so difficult for them to find them that they were just not using it in the first place. So this is such a simple discovery that completely changed. Hey, actually, our customers need a bit more guidance on how to find the things that we have built so that they can get the value that we expect for them to get. This wasn't a fault of the individual things that we had built, but we were missing a layer that connected everything. Again, not an innovative idea or a groundbreaking idea, but something so simple can have a huge effect, and you can see that with the world's simplest analysis. The other one was, again, around understanding how our customers use the product and trying to make things as smooth for them as possible. Again, this also takes an incredibly simple analysis. So essentially just looking at customers that are doing repetitive behaviors through us and thinking through how do we make this repetitive behavior as seamless and intuitive as possible. So obviously, because Wise started as a remittance company, there are a bunch of customers that come and send money regularly overseas. Maybe they're paying rent overseas, or they're helping a family member overseas, so they send a certain amount. We didn't really have a scheduling experience. We didn't really have an experience where you can say every month on Thursdays, on the first Thursday of every month, I want you to send X amount to this person, which is very simple. So it was super annoying for a customer to come in and do the exact behavior every single month. And this was actually causing a huge drop-off in actually a very valuable product that a lot of customers use. And so by looking at how much of the repetitive behavior exists on the platform, we were able to build something that's very simple that now has a huge amount of adoption, and I think has made a lot of customers happy. I'm getting a sign on my minutes, so I'll try to wrap up the example. But I'll leave you with this. So ultimately, everything that I've talked about should land itself to, we want an organization. So if you want to have a very data-driven organization, the main things to take away is be clear on the problems that you're trying to solve, make sure that you're hiring the right people who want to solve those problems, and then bring technical and soft skills and the curiosity to solve those problems. Set them up in a way where their work can be as contextual as possible, put them behind the problems that they care about, and then let them work through those problems, but also build a mechanism where those same people are on the hook to articulate the value that they've delivered through the work that they've done, right? So this thing that we've launched or this business initiative that we've taken on, what is the value that we've gotten from that, and were our hypotheses right? And did we see the impact that we expected to see, which actually comes from having a bit of an iterative learning and retroing culture, especially in a product world. We build a bunch of things and then we never look at them unless something is really broken. And I think being able to do that in a very seamless way by integrating that into your process can make your organization very, very powerful. I think, I had a thank you slide. Okay, anyways, I will end here, but thank you so much for listening. Hopefully this was useful. Yeah, any questions that you have, happy to answer.
Have time for only couple of questions.
Sorry.
Thank you very much for the presentation. My question is, we mentioned it's quite a long journey to get there. Mm-hmm. How do you track progress against it? How do you know that your company is actually getting there and being more analytics driven?
Yeah, so I think with any of these things, it's always good instead of rolling things out in mass, so saying, okay, now across the whole organization, we're going to have an embedded model and the analysts will work this way. I think you are diluting the impact that you can see because, like you said, it takes a really long time to get there. I think it's always good to start with a section of the business. So when we started having this embedded model, we have a squad and tribe structure. So we started with one squad and we said, okay, this is the place where a lot of important work is happening. It's severely under-resourced from an analytics point of view. We will test these principles that we're working on by first starting here and seeing how that works. And then once you have a proof of concept, essentially, then you can start rolling that out. But I think with any of these big undertakings, you want to start in a place that's a lot more contained so you can kind of see that for yourself and then scale from there.
Yeah. Hi, Hazal. Thank you very much for your talk. Really interesting, very insightful. Clearly, a lot of experience and learnings you've picked up along the way. I've just written down a few words before I get to the question. They were, hopefully from your talk, articulation, get clear on the problem, consistency, structure, change management. And I think I'm going back to possibly the beginning part of your talk, just to out myself. I'm somebody who does think that a common shared understanding is actually very, very important in an organization helping to deliver things. How, maybe you might have some experiences of butting up against people in an organization who might not share that idea and might think that actually just getting things done is easy and why haven't we built it already, let alone made the millions that we hope to?
Yeah, so this still exists, like regardless of how thoughtful you lay out your organization. And the best, I guess, like the more obvious way or the most obvious place I see this is like even today is around experimentation. There's a lot of resistance to why are we testing if we know that this is clearly a better experience, let's just launch it. So yeah, that resistance exists, and I don't think that it's realistic to think that it will completely go away. I think what I talked about around doing like the iterative learning and the retros piece is really important. So there have been many instances over my 4 years at Wise where a product team, because due to leadership directive or because they had very strong conviction, decided to work on something and launch something that didn't actually have a lot of backing in data. And there is only so much that you could push. There are instances where you get to a point where you say, okay, you are going to launch it, so then you launch it. But then if they're not held accountable to the impact of the hypotheses that they had, we will never learn from that, and we will never learn to not do that in the future. And again, there are instances where their instinct might be right, and you can see a huge impact. But by doing retros, meaning, okay, you're launching this feature, there's no data to back up that this is the right feature to work on, but you have assumptions that A, B, C will happen. Let the feature be built and launch it. 6 months later, with your analysts, come back and see, did we actually achieve those hypotheses? Did we see that these customers are using it? Did we see this rate that you thought would increase? And if that didn't happen, you don't need to have this speculative conversation. You can clearly say, you thought that you were going to bring 500 million in revenue, and it actually was 10. And it kind of just speaks for itself. I found that having a couple of examples like that really changes the culture in an organization. It's a slower burn, but instead of kind of fighting against the current, sometimes it's okay to take a step back, take that loss, but then make sure that you come back to it, and let the organization know where they've done well or they didn't.
Yeah. I'm sorry, but you can catch up with the speaker, I think, in the break. Thank you so much, Hazal. Let's give her a final applause.